Someone tell a joke.
Good luck, everyone.
Thank you. I'm afraid we'd like to type anything in because I think I'll mess everything up. So.
Should we mute ourselves?
Okay. Good evening and welcome to the first ever online Irish Writers Centre Taking the Mic. It's great to see such a good virtual turnout. I'm Betty Stenson, Programming Officer at the Centre, and on behalf of myself and my colleagues, I'd like to wish you all a lovely evening of memoir, poetry, prose, stories, and perhaps some song. Thanks to my colleagues Fiona and Jess, who are here also this evening looking after the tech side of things. We're very pleased to have the wonderful writer, Alan McMonagle, as our special guest tonight, and delighted that the whole evening will be ably emceed by writer Berni Dwan. The Irish Writers Centre is 30 years old this year, and as the National Resource Centre for Irish Literature, our mission continues to be to support and promote writers at all stages of their development. We've long been offering Taking the Mic sessions in the Centre, where people are encouraged to share their creative endeavours, and we're delighted to add this online Taking the Mic event to our diverse online programme. This programme includes online writing courses, information sessions, bursaries, residencies, mentorships, young writer delegate opportunities, and professional development programmes. So, very quickly, some housekeeping rules. Each participant will have 5 minutes to perform. You don't have to perform for the full 5 minutes, but if you're in full flow, we'll give you a 1 minute reminder when your time is nearly up. 5 minutes is a long time on Zoom, so I don't think that many people will want to go over that time slot. Your videos will be switched on so that we can all be seen on screen together, but if you wish, you can switch your video off, but your mics will be muted until your individual performances begin. Berni Dwan will introduce each of you in turn, and you will be able to communicate about performances using the chat function. If you have any technical problems and can't connect when it is your slot, we will continue with the schedule and give you a chance to perform at the end. We hope that you have a lovely, informal and fun evening. Please bear with us as we bring the first online Taking the Mic to you. I hope it all goes without a hitch. We have a really active social media presence, so feel free to post about tonight to Twitter and Facebook and Instagram. And sign up for our newsletter if you haven't already done so. So, I'm going to just quickly introduce Berni and Alan, and then we'll go on with the show. Berni Dwan broadcasts about literature and history on Near FM 90.3. Her poems have appeared in Poetry Ireland Review, Chronog, Irish Times New Irish Writing, The Blue Nib, The Galway Review, Southward, Crossways and Step Away, among others. The Smock Alley Theatre shows, Unrhymed Dublin 2016, and The Seven Ages, Like It or Not 2020 are observational. Her first poetry collection, Frankly Baby, was published by Lapwing Press in 2018. Berni came second in the Johnson Swift Awards and was shortlisted for the Anthony Cronin International Poetry Award. She is the recipient of 2 grants from the Broadcasting Authority of Ireland, one for a collaborative radio drama and one for an 8-part series of the coming of age novel. Alan McMonagle has written for radio and published 2 collections of short stories, Liar, Liar and Psychotic Episodes. His first novel, Ithaca, was published by Pictor in 2017, and a second novel, Laura Cassidy's Walk of Fame, was published last year now, actually. So that's it for me. Take it away, Berni.
A little short essay called Former Yugoslavia. Can I be heard okay?
You can?
I can hear an echo. Yep, okay. Former Yugoslavia. We sneak off the plane at the military base in Mostar, abandoning the pilgrims to Medjugorje, who fly on to the apparition site of the Virgin Mary and see the sun cavort across the sky, if they're lucky. They're from Cork and have entertained us with fervent recitations of the Rosary, off-key hymn singing and pious prattle about declining morals in 1980s Ireland. We are heading to a sun that does not cavort, but will shine steadily all day and set romantically for our evening walks hand in hand. The bus journey to our ungodly Adriatic resort takes 6 hours, with a bathroom stop in Belgrade. The honeymoon couple from Longford did not expect Yugoslavia to be so hot in July. I wonder at their naivety. He is wearing a suit with shirt and tie. Looks like he just stepped off the podium after hollering a speech at a Fianna Fáil Ardèche, gagging for a pint of Bass, all puce and sweaty with a dishevelled comb over. Stepping off the bus in Belgrade, a city in the death throes of Eastern European austerity, I feel like the spy who came in from the cold. The Spartan bathrooms are run with military precision by a bird-like woman with sharp features, a nylon coat and a mop, and doubtless a retractable dagger in her shoe, bellowing orders like a drill sergeant. There'll be no jumping queues with this lady. We reach our destination in the dead of night. Next day, we meet the honeymoon couple from Longford. He laments not being able to get a good feed and wonders if he could find a mixed grill somewhere. Wishing him luck with his culinary quest, we hope he's not confronted, like we were, with a provocatively arranged platter of anatomically intact langoustine, that unsettling fishy confusion of giant shrimp and miniature lobster. The encouraging eyes of the waiter, the pleading eyes of the langoustine, and the stern eyes of Marshal Tito in full military portraiture stare at us expectantly, but in vain. We just eat the chips, pay quickly, and run out. We take a ferry to the medieval city of Dubrovnik on its hottest day in 100 years. Unable to climb the perimeter walls, I find the shade of a tree, order a beer, and Brian takes my photo. I am pleasantly surprised by the results. Me, looking like Jackie Onassis, albeit from a distance, with my sunglasses and bobbed hair. Brian, with his red hair and no factor 50, does brave the perimeter walls and returns looking like John Mills after his ice cold in Alex desert romp. We take a cable car trip with a bunch of American students from Old Town Dubrovnik to Sword Hill. I'm more interested in their urbane conversation than with the stunning views. They are forever young in my photo album. On the flight home, we get rictus smiles from the holier-than-thou Cork pilgrims. I'm guessing they didn't wreck the gaff in Medjugorje. The babe magnet from Longford looks hungry and distracted. He is likely dreaming of a butcher's cold room that will feed him and keep him cool. Me and Brian had a great time. He even had a go at water skiing, alarmingly attached to a careering wreck with an outboard motor piloted by a tweed-jacketed chancer with a cigarette attached to his droopy moustache, displaying the skill, if not the panache, of 007. Life jackets being a Western European extravagance, I almost broke my wrists holding on, while himself broke some class of a world speed, water speed record. Two youngsters on our first foreign holiday. I wonder where the American students are now, and the Longford honeymoon couple. As for the pilgrims, I hope they got either consolation or sense. Brian's gone to collect the pizza. Thank you.
Bernie, just to say that you're mute there. Betty.
Sorry?
Betty, just to say that you're mute there.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yep.
Will you go on to introduce the next reader then, Bernie, please?
Okay. Now, so first up, we have Fiona O'Rourke. Now, Fiona is an author, facilitator, and mentor from Larne. And Fiona writes social realism with gallows humour and the odd piece of time travel. I like it. In childhood, she believed the draft under the door was the giraffe under the door. And she often harvests her mistakes for fictional exploration. Her stories have been published, broadcast, and translated, and she was an Irish Novel Fair winner in 2016. Her current work, Take Me to Palestine Street, is available for consideration by agents and publishers. She holds the MPhil in creative writing from TCD. So take it away, Fiona.
Thanks, Bernie. Thanks, everyone. This is called I Can't See What the Problem Is. In the years BC, before COVID, I travelled the length of this island, Dublin to Larne, Dublin to Wexford, Dublin to all over, more Dublin to Larnes, a pure Piscean intent on water. Since I only do time travel these days, I've become a tourist in my own past, mainly triggered by news from the north. 4 days shy of my 21st birthday, I was threatened with drowning by a gang of protesters, and then with arrest by an RUC man armed with the one legally held gun in this scenario. Larne, 3rd of March, 1986. The town and surrounds an eager participant in a loyalist day of protest against the Anglo-Irish Agreement, which, despite the chaos, violence, and intimidation it inspired, would pave the way for the Good Friday Agreement. Larne folk excel at minimising dire situations. Ach, sure, no one died. Raise shoulder shrugs and eye rolls to an Olympic sport. You may keep your head as low as a Larne Catholic was a wise mantra for the minority population. But sometimes you had to rear up from its protective caution. In 1986, Ulster said no. If six-county Ulster said no, then Larne said, no way. The word no on its own could do no justice to the majority population's outrage at the notion of sellout. The whiff of a united Ireland had mobilised this gang of protesters, strapping agricultural lads built like Massey Fergusons that myself and my brother faced on the Antrim Coast Road, 2 miles outside the town and not far from the house of a school friend whose father a decade previous had been assassinated by a car bomb. 10 years down the road, it seemed likely that yes, us two Larne Catholics, car and all, would be fired into the sea. The gang possessed enough anger-fueled muscle, plus already my brother had been offered a broken jaw for looking at them sideways. The one RUC officer on duty was facilitating all such possibilities. With his back-turned stance, his boot resting on the lower rail of the fence between us and the sea, submachine gun parallel to the top rail, a man languishing, hypnotised at the morning horizon. Perhaps Scotland was visible, or Paddy's milestone. I don't recall. I remember that the sea barely batted an eyelid in its roll from the Maidens lighthouses to the black rocks of Drains Bay. On this particular day, no ferry load of lorries to plough the usual waves. All international sea travel into Ireland via the 6 counties had been halted by protesters. My request for law enforcement went down like a rendition of 4 green fields in a 12th of July field. I can't see what the problem is, miss, breathed the RUC man. Hardly surprising, since this law enforcer maintained his seaward gaze. Maybe he could not hear what the problem was either. The diverse range of sectarian abuse directed at the 2 Taigs in this scenario may have been a blur to his ears. I reminded him of his top boss, Sir John Herman's promise that the RUC would ensure that no roads would be closed during the Loyalist Day of protest, that threatening and intimidatory behaviour would not be tolerated. I can't see what the problem is, miss, said the RUC man. With the gulders of the gang still promising to lift the car and hurl the Fenians into the sea, it felt like reading the Red Act to the Red Act reader, and earned me a promise of arrest for obstruction on the coast road, which was being illegally obstructed by protesters. Go figure, as nobody ever said in Larne. And so I skulked back to the car, and my brother stuck the boot down, 0 to 60 in 5 seconds, worthy of Bodie and Doyle and the professionals. A high-speed reverse to party songs, usually sung in the marching season, and unfurling of the banner celebrations, and any time of year, actually. This was an enforced day off work, and the Coast Road scenario was minor compared to what news reports would expose throughout the day. Some Larne politicians had issued a call to arms and also managed not to get their own hands one bit dirty. I phoned the local RUC station to lodge a complaint, which was never followed up, and I believe lies festering still under the ghost of the station carpet. I shrugged my shoulders and rolled my eyes. Sure, no one died, and that's the main thing. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Fiona. Fiona, I love the way you inject humour into serious subject matter. It's great. I love it. Thank you. Okay, so next up then is Claire Bulger. Now, Claire is a creative therapist based in the west of Ireland who draws her memories with words. And mighty fine memories they are too, may I say, Claire. Off you go.
Okay, my time. Let's start with the facts. I was born on the 5th of December, 1971. I was actually supposed to be born in 1972, but I came early. I always thought that was important, as I wanted to be seen as specifically one thing. My birth cert said 1971, but all my classmates seemed to be born in 1972, always on the cusp of things and in between. Being born in Limerick, even though I'm from Kerry, and every summer went to visit Clare relatives via the ferry, which all seems appropriate transport, a way of transitioning between worlds. The 70s were that completely, a transitioning time, but we didn't know it then. Google labels me as Generation X in the American way of things, but I could claim the title of the Pope's child, but I own myself completely and have never connected to the control of labels. What I love is music, and the year I was born throbbed with Marvin Gaye's What's Going On, Wild Horses, Gypsies, Tramps and Thieves, The Doors, and Bowie. At least that's what I imagine my mother listened to on the radio. The coming into conscious awareness happens at different stages, but I know the playlist of my life was formed bouncing around in my mother's belly, walking the streets of Tralee, a provincial town in a provincial time, but already tuning into the outside world. I was 5 years too late to miss the excitement of James Mansfield's visiting our town. The streets are familiar in the RTE black and white archives, courtesy of Miss Mansfield. God, does Tralee ever change? I mean, of course, shops change, the clothes change, the cars change, but the architecture seems frozen in time. Or perhaps that is just seeing it with your eyes. You need to stand right in it, close your eyes, push and jostle your way out the front of the people and into the cameras. The air of excitement is palpable. Everyone's dressed up, mini skirts hold onto knees. Bill O'Hurley is asking everyone what's going on. Giggles are being suppressed as men pontificate and women shrug, much ado about nothing. A crowd is a heaving thing and swirls like leaves as Miss Mansfield's black limousine pulls up outside the Brandon Hotel, and she emerges, a bright, luminous goddess, greets the congregation, and we radiate too as we push closer, wanting to be in her presence. Something different to believe in. Oh God, something different. The show is cancelled. Something about missing musicians and men crawling back under a bishop's skirt. Miss Mansfield had a hearty breakfast before leaving Tralee and heading on to Paris. She remembered the people of Tralee fondly and said that if only the bishop had seen her show, he would not have condemned it, but condoned it, if only. But the crowd moved on, spiritually enriched and sustained for the long journey out of the 60s. Gay Byrne understood what was going on and accompanied us as he did me on my entry into the world. My mother in labour in the delivery room, with flimsy screens separating each woman and each other's screams. And in this Dante's circle of hell, the Late Late Show is turned up high, and my mother holds on to Gay's voice as she pushes through the pain, and I am born after midnight, a little 4-pound thing, a miracle. And in my mother's arms we gaze at each other, and all I can say, like Marvin Gaye, is the only answer is love.
Great stuff, Claire. What a beautiful rendition of a 70s childhood and interlaced with popular culture and what's the art? Catherine Mansfield. Yeah, bit of a blonde bombshell. Amazing. I love it. Love it. Thank you. Okay, so next up we have Cathy Carson. So Cathy is a cancer nurse, a counsellor, and a spoken word performer from County Down. Cathy has performed at festivals, open mic events, television, radio, podcasts, and has been commissioned to write and perform for charities. Her headline performances have been described as raw, unflinching, honest, and captivating. Cathy has been published in the Bramley Anthology and in Her Other Language, an anthology that highlights domestic violence. So off you go, Cathy.
Thank you, Bernie. This is Copper Pennies. It was the hop, skip, drag, swagger that caught my eye. You had your fists forced into jean pockets, all grown man attitude in a small boy frame. I figured you were 7, maybe 8. I watched your shoulders sag further with every door closed as you went from house to house, and I hadn't seen you before. I wondered if you were collecting or seeking sponsorship. I got a few coins out just in case and watched and waited. You reached to my gate, spotted me in the window, grinned at me like we were old friends, strode my path with your chin in the air like you owned the world, and knocked my door 3 times. When the door barely opened, you shoved a flame red head into my hallway, scanned my living room for evidence, and asked, "Here, missus, have you any children?" And those words, God, they landed in the hollow of me, where 4 children had begun. Each one conceived of hope and longing and loss. Each one named, their whole lives carved out in my heart before they left me, and the last one scraped from within me like he had never belonged. So, no, I said, I don't have any children. And you scratched a bird's nest into your crown, and you placed your hand in mine, God, cool and smooth as a pebble, and you looked up at me with copper eyes like pennies that had just dropped. And you said, "Missus, are you not allowed them? My mummy isn't allowed me." I remember steadying myself against the door frame, scrambling for words, anchor, breath, but you were already on my sofa, kicking off your size 2 trainers, tucking soft soles up in under your bottom. I'm staying with Eva, you shouted. Not the next house, not the next house, but the next house. She's my auntie. She's ginger. And you waited. And I am ginger. And you gave me this look that I would come to know meant keep up. Do you have a PlayStation? Now, at this stage, I know I should have said you shouldn't be in a stranger's house, that maybe you should leave. But something inside me recognized this indiscriminate disclosure, this seeking out of safe adults, this need to be known and seen that if not caught, I knew would turn into fear of the same. So instead I said, I don't have a PlayStation, but I do have Disney. Toy Story! You jumped back in my sofa and arranged the cushions because you were going nowhere. So the first time we watched Toy Story, and the second time you asked for crayons, but I had none, for drawing paper, and I had none. So we lay belly down on a tiled kitchen floor and drew on the back of unused wallpaper with Sharpie pens. And there were so many times after that. 2 years of knocks on my door with paintings for my fridge, or your face lit up with pride at new trainers, but mostly you just wanted to come in because you were bored, or Eva had told you to give her headpiece. On the day we moved home to just 2 streets away, you wailed. You buried your flame red head into my hips and hiccuped into my pockets. Am I allowed in your new house? God, I thought of all the things we both hadn't been allowed. I thought of paintings taken from my fridge, packed carefully into boxes, of Toy Story, and cold bellies on tiled kitchen floors, of the hollow that you had filled. I lifted your face to mine, God, those pennies. Oh yes, I said, you're definitely allowed in my new house. And over the years, the visits got less until they stopped. I still see you sometimes. At 14, you tower above me now, but that hop, skip, drag, swagger will catch my eye. And you will grin at me like you did the first time and remind me that I may not be a mother, but I can still have children. Thanks, Berni.
Thanks very much, Cathy. Cathy, I mean, look, that was a stellar performance of a magical piece. And, you know, you never flinch from the uncomfortable, but then you kind of sensitively employ humor with it, and you just do an amazing job, and I was delighted to hear that. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so next up is Seamus O'Connor. Now, Seamus taught English at 2nd level and worked in education and guidance at 3rd level. He now devotes more time to writing and to other creative pursuits. His writing is influenced by recollections of childhood years in the Midlands and is inspired by the interaction between music and poetry. So take it away, Seamus. He's on mute.
Okay.
Yep.
You can hear me. Okay.
Yep.
Okay, thanks, Berni. Growing up with the Beatles. Little darlings, it's been a long, cold, lonely winter. Little darling, it seems like years since it's been here. Here comes the sun, doo-doo-doo-doo. Here comes the sun, and I say it's all right. Merseyside was swinging while we were flinging hay into barns. Summers by Shannonside, Beatles singing on the radio, on black and white TV, during our growing years in County Offaly. They livened up many a dreary day, and we did Beatlemania in our own special way. We clapped to the beat, we knocked on wood, we rattled pails. The singers on the school bus belted Yellow Submarine. The shy boy at the disco thought, I want to hold your hand. The coy girls in the choir sweetly sang, Hey Jude. In times of resignation, we sang, Let It Be. In times of desperation, help, I need somebody. In times of expectation, we sang, Here Comes the Sun. Down Wexford Way, they vocalized Strawberry Fields Forever, while our older cousins harmonized Come Together or Day Tripper. Our popular priest sermonized All you need is love. All you need is love. All you need is love, love, love is all you need. Vibes of celebration, twist and shout, vows of cooperation, we can work it out. Views on separation, she's leaving home. To their string of hits, we would clap, 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 widening the generation gap. Our elders couldn't understand our bond with Sergeant Pepper's Heart Club Band. That foursome who sang with attitude and cheek of their need for love 8 days a week. Parents were perplexed at our evolution from children to teens, embracing revolution. They flared up as we followed the band. A line was drawn in the sand. Discord spread across the nation. Deprecation versus admiration. Condemnation versus adulation. Beatlephobia versus Beatlemania. We faced it down. We just didn't care. Nobody could stop us from growing our hair. They shook their heads and called us galoots. We did a hippie hippie shake in our Beatle boots. The Merseyside spiders wove their web of song. 50 years later, I still sing along. The fabulous four still please me as I meander the long and winding road across the universe. The long and winding road that leads me to sing on Zoom. I've waited oh so long. Now I'm famous in my room. On Berni's spoken word, coming of age on Zoom.
Fair play to you, Seamus. You're very brave now to inject song into your piece. You can hold a note now. Paul McCartney should be giving you royalties. And
Yeah.
I'm just saying it's a good job the Beatles came along, because otherwise you'd be singing Big Tom. Thanks a million, Seamus.
Thank you.
Bernie, can I jump in here for a second? I just saw from the schedule that Alan should have spoken at the top of the programme.
Yep.
So could we have Alan doing his first reading now?
Yes,
Would
of
you mind,
course.
Alan?
Yep.
Thanks, Bernie.
Thanks, Bernie. Thanks, Betty. Lovely to be here. Great readings, everyone. Great singing too. I'll read a brief excerpt from my first novel, Ithaca. The voice you'll hear is that of an 11, nearly 12-year-old, and he lives with his mother. And this excerpt might provide an early flavor of the dynamic between the pair. There was no doubt about it. I was living with a crazy woman. To look at her, you wouldn't have suspected a thing. She was slim and wore short-length skirts that made men whistle. She paraded about in fashion boots that went to her knees. She had bleached hair she kept in a tidy bob. I suppose she wasn't a bad-looking woman, and she always had a good story for the lads that came knocking for the money she owed. The lad she owed for fixing the hole that appeared in the sitting room ceiling had come knocking. It was about the 10th time he'd been around, and that after several polite phone calls and a handful of reasonably worded pay-up letters. "Hello, Barty," she'd said to him, after accidentally letting herself get caught at the front door. "Hello indeed," Barty said, all set to offer his harsh, let me have my money words. But of course, she was already a step or two ahead of Barty, and she was swaying from side to side, fiddling with a button on her shirt, letting it open a little bit. And before Barty had a chance to pretend he hadn't been distracted by the bits of flesh now visible, she was into her story about Mario Devine, our evil landlord, and how he had been bullying the last coppers out of her pocket to pay the rent, while at the same time paying no attention to the broken radiator that was causing her suffering child to half freeze to death every night. And next thing, not only was Barty letting her off the hook for the hole in the ceiling, but he was on hands and knees in the upstairs bedroom, going at our broken radiator with his wriggly wrench. "You are a hero of mine, Barty Brovey," she said to him 3 hours later, and blew him a kiss as she was seeing him out the front door. That wasn't even the start of it. Before that, Gavin McGoldrick wouldn't hand back the keys of the useless rust bucket that passed for our car after he'd patched it up for about the 150th time. "Oh, please, Gavin," she said, turning on her lips. "Please, Gavin, it's an emergency. It's Jason." "Jason," said Gavin. "Yes, Jason," she said, nodding back in my direction. "He's not well. In fact, it's serious. They found another lump." "A lump," said Gavin. "Yes," she said, "a third one. You should see it. It's like he's growing another testicle." Already Gavin was nearly choking to death, and you could tell he wouldn't let us out of his garage fast enough. "Please," he said, giving the oily keys a wipe with his cloth. "Take your car. Whatever you need, take it," he said, gesturing to the array of Banjak's cars scattered about his workshop. I'd say he'd even have gone so far as to lend her the high-octane sports car he'd been working on when we showed up to begin with. But she was only getting started now, and she was soon filling Gavin's head with forceps and scalpels and punctured scrotums and the rivers of pus pouring out of me. "My poor boy," she said, clutching herself. "My one son, my only child." And all the time, Gavin was shrinking further and further back inside his workshop. And for every backward step he took, she was swaggering forward, those hips doing their thing again, her big poor me eyes working their irreversible magic. "Just imagine," she said to me on our way home again, as she drove straight through a red light. "Just imagine if I was a man. I'd be dangerous, you know. I'd go places." "Where would you go?" I asked her, and she called me a numpty, said she didn't mean it literally. "Tell you one thing though," she went on, "if I was a man, I would raise my arm and own up to some of the stunts that have been pulled around here. If I was a man, I wouldn't be long fixing the mess this dump of a place is in." "What has being a man got to do with fixing it?" I wanted to know. And she let go of the steering wheel, put her hands on her popular hips, looking my way, and said, "Don't you know anything?" Then we mounted the footpath and nearly ran over old Tom Redhead out on his daily walk. Thanks.
Hilarious. Very slick and very hilarious. I loved that book. I recommend it all over the place. And I love the way you capture like the marginalized in a post-Celtic Tiger Ireland, and you get inside the head of the 12-year-old boy and the scheming mother in her 30s. It's just brilliant. Thanks a million.
Thanks yourself, Bernie.
Right, next up, we have Gerald Kelly. Now, Gerald is an actor and a voiceover artist based in Belfast. He loves to travel and write. He loves to travel and write about wee notions as he goes through life. He's delighted to be performing his piece, and we're delighted to have you, Gerald. So off you go. Thank you.
Thanks very much. This is Doom and Gloom. I got a letter a few weeks ago from the hospital asking if I wanted my samples destroyed or to be kept for another 5 years. I had to think about it for a while. Quick recap. So part of the deal with losing your reproductive organs is that you have to deposit some of your stuff before it's too late and they're all gone forever. And so in the future, you have some in storage for maybe if you want kids. So I head over to the fertility clinic, have a seat in the waiting room, and get stuck into reading about Angelina Jolie and all her wains in Hello magazine. It wasn't the type of seating area one might strike up a raucous conversation with a stranger. So the nurse lady calls me in. It's all rather exciting at this point. She gives me a little cup and tells me it's the second door on the left. I'm so nervous. I immediately take the second door on the right and walk straight into their staff room. Make a joke about how I don't usually do this with an audience and retreat back into the corridor. So I find the right room. Now it's very small, the room that is, tiny frosted window, half sink, Kleenex, lotions, plural, recliner, Lord only knows what has sat on leather, and a coffee table with a file box on it. Now I felt it was all rather excessive and extravagant, but sure, no matter. I'm deserving of such accoutrement. I checked out the contents of said box. As expected, it was a lot of colorful paraphernalia for encouragement of the task at hand, as it were. Alas, I was a strapping young man who never needed much encouragement or indeed much incentive up to that point. This was business, a walk in the park. If by park I meant cup and by walk I meant, well, you get the idea. I headed to the corner, faced the wall, closed my eyes, and thought of Ireland in all her glory. Done. So the nurse lady calls me a few days later. She very sheepishly asks if I wouldn't mind coming back in for another go in order to deposit a more substantial specimen. Jesus, feckin' mortified. But you know, in hindsight, I'd just been told I might be dying. So needless to say, I wasn't feeling very rambunctious. It wasn't my finest work. So she asks me to save up. Grand. So I rock up to the clinic like a week later. Nurse lady tells me second door on the left, and when I'm finished to come out and see her. Easy. I take the cup and tell her I won't be long, adding a single finger gun in her direction to help sweeten the jest. Now, I don't know if you've ever made a masturbation joke to an endocrinologist. There literally is no time in their day for such a gag, okay? So I struck down the corridor, and naturally I proceeded to proceed with the proceedings in the procedure room. Done. Now, there's a problem. In being the model student I am, I had revised too hard, overstudied in fact. It meant, well, the deed was over far sooner than I had planned. I couldn't leave now. I'm not a loser. So I sat and I played my phone for what I felt was the socially acceptable amount of time to, well, go for a walk in the park. Now, the second time I was blessed with cancer, I took it upon myself to go to the clinic, but I had genuinely forgot about the second visit before. In my mind, I'd only been once. Well, sure, you're here now, Gerard. I am indeed, Samantha. I'm here now. Proceeds to hand me the cup. The regional fertility clinic in Belfast requires approximately 10 straws worth of semen for adequate insemination. I have 23 straws. Ample, nay, copious amounts. They probably have a whole shelf just for me. So ladies, form an orderly queue. Just give me like 3 days notice so I can make a few phone calls, get my boys thawed out. Long story short, I told the clinic to hold on to them, just in case. I might need someone to help me write my stories one day. And even if I don't use them, then hopefully somebody else will. It's not all dim and gloom. Thank you.
Brilliant actor indeed. Brilliant, brilliant and clever. Angelina Jolie's Waynes. I love it. It's such brave material, you know, and so marvelously self-deprecating. And thanks a million. Thanks for sharing that with us. It was hilarious. Really, really enjoyed it. Thanks, Gerald.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Okay. Next up is Peter Clark. So Peter wrote his first poem way back in 1984, approaching his 39th birthday, and has been writing ever since. He attended his first workshop in 1991 at the Bantry Literary Festival and has participated in workshops ever since at the Irish Writers' Centre, Tyrone Guthrie Centre, and at Skyros in Greece. Peter has been a member of the Bealtaine Writers since 2008, and in 2021, he completed an MA in Creative Writing Poetry at Manchester Metropolitan University. His poems have been published in various publications and nominated for various prizes. So thank you very much, Peter. Off you go.
Thanks a million, Bernie. Don't I sound wonderful? My first poem is for Paula Meehan. This is Bealtaine Time, the festival in May for celebrating older people. And her latest book, As If by Magic, is the book of the festival. So this is for her. It's called Cooking. As evening draws, his thoughts turn to food preparation. Eating alone is a thoughtful menu. Beef bourguignon, salad niçoise, with a fine Bordeaux to excite the palate. He sets about basting his tongue as he goes. The intensity of the preparation sweeps aside the cares, upsets, and stresses of the day. His saliva glands in overdrive. A memory is triggered. An anxious young boy in a search to earn his first Scout badge begs his nan for help to cook. She sets him up through tears of laughter, instructs him through the mess of flour, fruit, and sugar until a golden tart emerges from the heat. This one is called At the French-Italian Border. A young French cellist holds his 17th century Stradivarius gently by its neck, rechecks its tuning. Eyes sparkling, face handsome, smooth, attractive, fashionable evening shadowed chin. Taking a deep breath, holding it, he scans the dressing room one last time. A young African man slinks along the station wearing a wrecked bomber jacket, old shirt, torn jeans, broken running shoes. He has a look of permanent hunger. Backpack looks surprisingly light, presuming a journey from who knows where over who knows how long. The cellist acknowledges the applause from the full house, takes his place on the elevated platform, places his precious instrument precisely and carefully on its spike, steadies himself, readies his bowing hand, fingers the strings. He nods to the conductor. The young man moves like a shadow, lingers beside the train door, notes the polizei positioned along the station. The whistle blows, doors begin to close. He checks one last time, leaps aboard, moves swiftly along the carriage, finds a seat, drops in, crouches low. And this is a journey of work. I've been a loyal party follower all my working life. I did my time, dug the trenches, bolstered the men with their puffed plumes, saw them on and off pedestals, waited with an eye, always, what could be given the right chance. He came like a gentle breeze, worked those same trenches over and over till an overnight success appeared. He knew who had done the work. He knew how to place the space. He knew his demographics. He knew just where to position me. So he did, and I watched his back. Each ministry tried me, lifted me, till I was on the edge of revolution, possibly a woman Taoiseach. The next one was different in every way. It put me next in line. I was ready. Unfortunately, bumpkins unraveled it. Reshuffles placed me precariously right in the firing line. An impossibility. Like rolling hills in an earthquake, eruption and eruption until and until. I held the line, rode in behind, held it together, then the train wreck. That was me done, under bust.
Thank you, Seamus. Thank you. There were three lovely poems. I love that the line basting his tone in the first poem, and in the second poem you so beautifully capture the distance between the two young men. And if I listened correctly, I think you gave a very good rendition of a could have, would have, should have type, was it? In the third poem. If only I could have, would have, should have. That's brilliant. Thanks very much, Seamus. Sorry, thanks very much, Peter. Peter, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Next up is Berni here. No. Sean Rowan? No. Eamon Summers then. Eamon is here, yes?
Hi,
okay.
I'm Sean Rowan, but Eamon can go first if he wants.
Oh no, Sean, we may as well keep the order. So Sean, do you want to tell us a quick line or two about yourself before you start your piece?
I'm a poet from County Meath. I think that says it all.
Yep.
And I've got a few poems for you. And I'll start with this one. There was a power cut in the southeast of County Meath, the very hour my father breathed his last of twilight and July. I flicked the light switch, automatically at first as I reached his room for candles, but then deliberately and repeatedly as my eyes adapted to the gloom. My second poem is called Witness Marks. I think a lot of us might have had this experience of going to the house of somebody, perhaps parents or grandparents. Witness marks. Long case, wall mounted, spring driven, electric. Their house was chock-a-block with clocks, all primed that quarter hourly cuckooed, clanged or chimed in maddening near unison. Once they'd struck, their ticking set my soul a-whir, reminding me of my mortality. Him it must have soothed, for he ignored the gathering dust on wood for opening, adjusting, and slow winding. Jewelers eulogized my new Swiss wristwatch, its gold escapement and the tourbillon beautiful as an astrolabe. I cared only that it run in a sundial silence with bars instead of numerals round the face, and no frenetic sweeping second hand. Yet still at midnight, when the date box blinks, my bedside locker amplifies the click. The next poem is, you may not be old enough to have had this experience. You're walking down the street and out of the blue, you see the face of someone you once were very close, perhaps intimate with, and you realize that you're still crazy after all these years. I saw in a middle-aged stranger's face the fine-drawn darling features of a girl I'd loved in college. Full lips, arched brow, brown eyes that mirrored my straining and my squinting incredulity as we waltzed our way, as if on casters, towards one another. It hardly struck me if she changed that much, though she must have. Time had crumpled and folded back onto itself like her yellow scarf. For the few minutes that we ranged and squabbled over and rearranged, the autumn lived together and the decades spent apart. You've got a memory like a sieve, she said. Later, I wondered if this looming mug had shocked her in its grizzled, garbled state, or if it still retained some of that boyishness from days when our affections at full gallop had shied at the first high gates of commitment. But since I'm not the sort to spend my nights undergoing by windows the metallic and meticulous surgery of moonshine, or want to sift through memories of hair, tawnied and winnowed by an evening breeze on the cornfield loving light of September, to curious mates, I just laughed the whole thing off. Evidently, she had no regrets, I said. She was far too happy to see me. What about you? They asked. Regrets? Regrets are what the French discuss over baguettes, filtered coffees, unfiltered cigarettes. Thank you. My next one, I think I'm within my time. A lot of writers have had difficult childhoods. Mine was idyllic. And I often tell friends the worst thing that ever happened to me was when they changed our telephone number from 6 digits to 7. And I felt I had to write a poem about that. Of course, it's a lament. And please bear with me if I get emotional. Anyway, the poem is called 255242. 255242. A balanced phrase, synonymous with home and days of perfect length. An unencumbered sound estate. How this easily remembered line of poetry, hidden in a tome, could spell me back from rusting spoke-filled hallways to the oak desk and the cast iron chair. Evoke my name for old friends anywhere. Its incantation was auspicious. Always 255242. But even while the apparatus slumbered, the bands were read, robotically intoned by electronic clerics of the phone announcing that its single days were numbered. Soon it must stand, preceded by an 8. I took it badly, I admit. How strange that loss is often preferable to change, that love's less blind than unrequited hate. 8, 25, 52, 42. My palindrome and the beautiful caesura, the dactyl swallowing anapist. All of its gorgeousness ceased to exist with the lumbering arrival of that extra and primordial figure. As when you met your childhood sweetheart with her new fiancé. And her voice had that syncopated rhythm. Engaged, she said, do ring. But now you can't get through on 255242 without that fucking cipher in the way. And yet, you're still so reluctant to leave it. Some people take their landline numbers with them when they move house. Oh, I can well believe it.
Thanks very much. Sean, I always love the way you perform your poetry. And, you know, regrets are what the French discuss over baguettes.
So I found Bernie.
Yep. And, you know, I love the way you deal with things a lot of us dread doing, or we dread remembering, but we have to face up to, you know, our mortality and the significance of objects in our lives. You do that so well. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Bernie, and thanks to everybody for organising it. Thank you.
Okay, so next up we have Eamon Summers, all the way from London. Now, Eamon will read an extract from his novel. I love the name of this novel, Dolly Considine's Hotel, which will be published on the 8th of July So Eamon then, you're in London now, but you grew up in Dublin. His short story, Fear of Landing, was nominated for a Pushcart Prize. And is it Natty Bucht? Natty Bucht was included in Queer Fellas, a collection of LGBT plus fiction published by Basin Press. So Eamon is currently working on revisions to A Very Foolish Dream, and that name he says will change, which was highly commended in the 2019 Irish Writers' Centre Novel Fair. You can read more about Dolly on eamonsummers.com. So take it away, Eamon.
So I'm reading an extract set at the beginning of the novel. The date is the 8th of September 1983, which was a very auspicious day. It was the day after the conclusion of the pro-life abortion referendum, pro-life amendment referendum. And this was a party to celebrate a victory. Pro-life champion Mrs. Eileen Mitchell studied the artificial orangeness of her squash drink as the youth was ushered out of the hotel lounge, his nakedness partially covered by a cape taken by Mrs. Mitchell's assistant from one of the dancers who had participated in the shameful skit on Irish motherhood. Two other performers squeezed the 7-foot-high papier-mâché Mother Ireland figure through the door behind him, her skirts lowered over her permanently distended belly and hiding the void from where the baby had been disgorged. Another bundled up the blood-stained caul that had accompanied the fully grown infant out onto the lounge carpet, careful to ensure the trailing umbilical cord did not trip up any of the referendum victory party crowd as they swarmed into the space vacated by the departing troop. Dolly McLean, ní Considine, had hoped to enjoy the evening as a guest rather than as the hotel's landlady. But here she was in a delicate red dress in place of her day-to-day black culottes and matching top, needing to push through the throng to order the hotel's dog's body, to collect the dancers' swords and bring them to the first floor sitting room, and to make sure the Mother Ireland prop was pushed into the vestibule between the ladies and the stairs down to the gents. Partygoers on their way to their respective toilets would have to squeeze past the figure's exhausted grey face until it could be returned to the theatre where it belonged. On any other Thursday, she would have been feeling the exhilaration of having just finished a tough three-setter and be anticipating the white wine spritzer waiting for her in the tennis club bar. She prayed that with the shenanigans over, the referendum victory party would settle back into a normal late-night drinking session in the Curragh House Hotel. Over the next 2 hours, Mrs. Mitchell donned her ready-to-leave look several times, but whenever she mimed putting on her coat towards her assistant, Gilla McLean TD beamed his gleaming politician's grin at her, making her shake her head and say, "Perhaps I'll have a fresh orange squash." The evening had started with Gilla Easa, the opposition party's sitting representative for the Dublin South East constituency in which the hotel was located, making a presentation to Mrs. Mitchell in recognition of her valuable contribution to the pro-life victory. His elder brother, Cathal McLean, had been standing behind him and heard the words Gilla Easa loud whispered to Mrs. Mitchell, loud whispered as Mrs. Mitchell acknowledged the dying applause with her well-known self-effacing smile. But it wasn't until he saw the effect his brother's grins were having on Mrs. Mitchell's attempted departures that he realized it was Gilla Easa's whispered promise that made her go on to suffer an evening of mass drunkenness, perhaps in the hope that if he explained himself before she left, the outcome he'd predicted could be forestalled. "My brother Cathal tells me that the pro-life amendment is so badly worded," Gilla Easa had said, that almost any legal challenge to it will be upheld. The people of Ireland have been sold a pup. But no such explanation had been offered by the time Gilliasa's two young lackeys began rounding up any dancers they could find for a reprise of the performance. "Who fucked Mother Ireland?" a voice was heard to shout when the theme music faltered, having initially hushed most of the singing, shouting, and even snoring drunks still at the victory party. Dolly pushed through to where a man was wrestling the papier-mâché figure towards the Porchester lounge. "No more nakedness," she said. Thank you.
Thanks, Eamon. Love your radio voice. Cutting humor.
Sorry, Bernie.
Yep. Okay. Can you hear me, Amy? Yeah. I'm just saying I love your cutting humor and the sophisticated and unflinchingly insightful way you address things, and you capture the visceral intolerance of early 80s Ireland, that whole episode. And God, I love the name Gilla Isa. Where did you get that from? Gilla Isa. Brilliant. Thanks very much, Eamon.
Thank you, Bernie. Thank you, everyone. And it's absolutely to be lovely to be back in the Irish Writers' Centre at the open mic event.
Great. Okay, so next up we have Jimmy O'Connell from the Midlands. Okay, hiya, Jimmy. Now, Jimmy, originally from Dublin, but now living in the Midlands. So Jimmy graduated from UCD, and he has been writing and performing his work for many years in venues across the country. And in these lockdown times, he's been performing on Zoom. Jimmy's poetry has appeared in the Baltimore Review, Poetry Ireland Review, Step Away magazine, Flair, and the New Ulster. Jimmy, along with a small troupe of fellow poets, I wonder who they were, Jimmy. Were they wee honest troubadours?
Very honest.
Recently performed in Smock Alley Theatre. His poetry collection, Although It Is Night, was published by Word on the Street in 2013. In 2018, Jimmy published his first novel, Batter the Heart. Great title for a novel. So take it away there, Jimmy. Thank you.
Thank you, Bernie. I'll read two poems, basically childhood memories. Okay, the first one's called The Big Drain. Big drain was filled to its brim with rainbow greased inky water. Where cars my granddad repaired were washed. The yard flooded during heavy summer thunder showers, and we'd be shin high in Wellingtons while he would sweep dirt-turned sloppy mud into the drain. After flooding, I would be warned about playing near the drain, but I never heeded. Then one day, I got a brand new Matchbox military ambulance, its tiny red cross stamped on camouflage green. Peter pleaded with me to let him play with it. I warned him not to play near the drain, but he did not heed. I watched it slip out of his hands and roll into the watery maw. My panic turned to angry scream, and a nodule of knowledge thumped in my chest. It was lost forever. It would not be replaced, they said. After all, you were warned to stay away. But you could open the drain, get it out, I pleaded. It's gone, they said. Down into the netherworld of the town sewage system. But it wasn't my fault, I cried. He did it, probably on purpose, out of jealousy. I never asked him back to play. Have no memory of ever seeing him again. Only that first knowledge of a perversity that is inheld in all things desired. Next one is called Harbour Street, Tullamore. Again, it's a childhood memory. Here are Sunday afternoon shoppers, where another time ago, the silence of religious observation hung penitentially, or on occasion, a club match in O'Connor Park might see a procession of men, cigarettes in hand, nervously anticipating county glory. I smell petrol fumes now, but also there in the air, unexpectedly, the smell of animal piss. That clean, sharp tang must have seeped into these stones and cement grooved paths, released now to stagger memory into life. Calves slipping and slithering down green urine slop trailers. Pigs, pink and manure slathered, squealing in riotous protest as farmers, nicotine fingered, Wellingtons stuffed with brown stained dungarees, turn and twist them into display. Smell has tricked me into hearing my grandmother sending me to Rafters for £1.50 of back rashers. And make sure he gives you Tullamore sausages. He still stands there behind the counter, flour dust in his hair, slicing bacon. The smell of stale Guinness lingering from behind the yellow glass frosted door. You too will be a memory like me, young fella. He wraps the sausages in grease paper. Others will remember you for the ordinary old things. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Jimmy. Jimmy, you know, I love the way you share these great observations of rural town life. And I love that killer line at the end of your second poem. You too will be a memory one day, young fella. Sure, look, it's the same for us all. We need to be reminded of it often. And your first poem, it's a perfect childhood recollection. And it's, you know, it's important to remember how we all, you know, how so many children become attached to a particular small toy and how iconic that is for them in their little lives. So there you go, Jimmy, preserving in Aspic that rural town life. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Bernie.
I believe we have Alan up next. Alan McMonagle, our guest author.
Oh, hello again.
To read some more, Alan?
Yeah, I'll have a go. I'll have a go at from Laura Cassidy's Walk of Fame this time. I hope I don't cock this up. There's a lot of dialogue in it. So Laura Cassidy, she's a young woman on the make, certain in her belief that she has what it takes to become a screen and stage icon. In this scene, she needs to swing by her doctor to collect something. Look who it finally is, Doc says, eyeing up his wall clock when I land inside his surgery. Better late than dead, I say back, sitting myself comfortably into the chair across from him and his doctor desk. Careful now, Doc says, smiling at me, mocking is catching. Doc, you've been saving my life for 1.5 years now, and I have to say, I think you're doing a terrific job. So I have no fears on that score. If you ever need a reference, you know where to come. Coming from you, Laura, that is praise indeed. Of course it is. And let me also say, this is one comfortable chair. So, how have you been, Laura? I've got a feeling I'm going to be busy, Doc. Oh yes, there's a part coming up. It has my name written all over it. Is that so, Laura? In fact, as soon as we're done here, I'm on my way to the theatre. A new director has taken over. I'm hearing only good things, Doc, only good things. Well, that all sounds very interesting, Laura. Do you feel you're ready to return? As of precisely 1 hour ago, I'm counting. Yes, I most certainly do. I see. I was talking to your mother the other day. I hear there's a certain visitor due. A certain visitor? Tell me more, Doc. Her sister. She's due home for a visit. Has she arrived? She might have, I say, a Doc smile. She's been away a while, hasn't she? I wonder would I recognize her? If her photograph has anything to go by, I say, she is now more or less perfect. I've set myself the task of finding one blemish on her. I'll let you know how I get on. Oh, so you haven't actually spoken to her yet? No, But she's here. She has arrived. She appeared on our road at precisely 15 minutes past I couldn't care less o'clock, I say to that. You're a card, Laura. You really should think about finding a way to occupy that lively mind. I know exactly what you mean, Doc. Every morning now it seems I wake up and ask myself the same question. Appoint myself queen of the universe or annihilate the eastern side of town. That's the side of town I live on. Well, I'll make sure you're put on the to be spared list. I'm glad I know you, Laura. You'd nearly have me convinced. That's what my daddy used to say, Doc. Are you not pleased your sister is home? And with a new member of the family to show off, I hear. Well, to tell you the truth, Doc, I don't know how she ever made the time. According to the occasional bulletin we receive, she is killed out saving the various places she's holed up in. It certainly sounds like she's getting to see plenty of the world. Not enough, if you ask me. A while back, during their annual all-night Skype get-together, she was telling Mother a story about a lad in India with 2 heads. Born with them, he was, the 2 heads. If you ask me, that's the place for Jennifer, where lads with 2 heads are born. Doc shakes his own head and smiles. Your topics of conversation never cease to amaze me, Laura. Well, imagine if it started happening around here. You'd have your work cut out for you then, Doc. We wouldn't have so much time to talk. No, we wouldn't, Laura, he says, as he reaches for his doctor pad and pen. Doc is now busy scribbling out my 2 weeks' worth of medication. Mid-sentence, he puts down his pen, looks at me, his eyes suddenly searching. Have you any good movies to recommend to me, Laura? I haven't seen anything worthwhile in ages. I wish I did. Television is where it's at these days, Doc. That's what they're telling me. They keep trying to shove box sets at me. But if you ask me, there's still nothing to beat the silver screen. The magic of the movies. You said it, Doc. Speaking of the television, though, have you seen a show called House of Cards? Can't say I have. It's on Netflix. Daft stuff altogether. The mother loves it. I still haven't got Netflix, Laura. You don't know what you're missing. This pair in House of Cards, they are something else. A husband and wife pair. Now they want to rule the world. Guess what they have for breakfast? Apples and coffee. Apples and coffee? Yep. I would never have guessed that. That's why I told you, Doc. I asked Doc for a loan of his pen and scribble out for him Mother's Netflix login details. It's not everyone I would do this for, I say, as I pass the slip of paper his way and at the same time claim my prescription. But I suppose I have a soft spot for you, Doc. You're a charmer, Laura. I am, Doc. Charming as a helicopter slamming into Connemara above me. See you in a fortnight. Thanks. I'll leave it there.
Thanks, Alan. You became Laura there. You became her.
Oh, that's praise indeed. Not easy.
I love that book, and I love when Laura swings by the doctor, and I love the way he humours her, and then the banter and the play between them. You have it almost like a dialogue from a silver screen movie, and the way you capture how Laura loves her perfect sister, and you know, lines, throwaway lines like "I couldn't care less o'clock." Brilliant, very entertaining, clever. Thanks a million. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Great readings.
Okay, so next up we have Carol Caffrey. So Carol is an Irish writer and actor living in the UK. Her debut poetry pamphlet, The Untethered Space, was published by Forward Press in June 2020. Carol performs the one-woman play Music for Dogs by Paula Meehan, which earned 4 stars at the Edinburgh Fringe. So welcome, Carol, and in your own time, off you go. That's the second time Paula Meehan has been mentioned tonight.
Yeah. I actually have a poem about her as well, but not on me.
Okay.
Thanks very much. It's been a fantastic evening so far, and as somebody who's been living in England far too long, It's lovely to hear all the Irish accents. I almost feel as if I'm at home.
Oh.
I'm going to read two poems from the pamphlet, which is here, The Untethered Space, but because of Zoom eyes, I'm going to use the printed page. The first one is written in memory of my late brother, the actor Peter Caffrey. It's called A Good Death, New Year's Eve 2007. Elvis was on the telly, the '68 comeback special. We learned to jive to him. You even sang like him. So when he appeared in glorious color, I thought, yes. I'd brought the Z bed. Oops. Then asked myself, why would I sleep through these last hours of your precious life? What had I been thinking? Sleep could come later. Held the phone close to your ear so our sister could say goodbye. Don't know how she managed it without crying, but she did. I know you heard her, even saw you smile. Some friends called in, and as you dipped quietly towards death, and texts went to and fro, then it was just you and me. I'm beholden, the almighty privilege of that. Danced to Mustang Sally, sang on Raglan Road with Luke, read The Lake Isle of Innisfree when by chance the book opened at that page, and blessed the morphine dropping slow. Counting down the hours as the year turned, each pause in your breath becoming longer, I murmured poems, half-remembered prayers, listening for silence. Was it wrong of me to hope that you'd go before midnight came, to have the last of a filthy year done with? You had other ideas, you devil, lingered till 2-ish. I am an actor, you said, even at your weakest. Some hours later, I whispered that you were a great one, and a great brother too. The moment held, went. I never told my sisters your eyes opened at the end, and a single tear appeared as you looked blindly beyond me. I touched it, took it as your goodbye. And this next poem is called Postpartum, and it's about the 23rd of June, 2016, a date that will live in infamy. Postpartum. Night cloaks all living things, and earth itself cools its breath. Wildfires flicker here and there, while other patches of the wasted land shrivel under smoke and ash. When day exhales at last, a snapping twig, a rustle in the windless trees brings suspicion, not relief. We are in the debatable lands now, no longer speak in the easy ways. Within the borders of silence, we take a breath, take someone's measure before we ask, which way did you vote then? Don't get me started. And I'll finish with a few light-hearted lines. I wish I was Italian. I wish I was Italian. Formaggio, adagio, and grigio sound much more lovely than cheese, slowly, grey, don't they? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Carol. Look, that first poem about your brother's death, it's such an important, bunch of words put together. It's so very poignant and very real, and just little things.
I chose it because of all the people who can't be with their loved ones in this awful times, really.
Yeah. And even you mentioned music, and music is so important in the last few hours of someone's life. It really is, and you capture that so well and tell it back to us. And even admitting that you were guilty you know, hoping that he would die maybe a few hours early, you know. Something we've probably all felt at different stages. Moving on to your Brexit poem then, there's no shortage of material there. We'll be writing about that for forever and ever. Thanks very much, Carol. Thank you. Okay, so next up is Emma Hines. Sorry, yes, Emma Hines. Hi, Emma. Emma is a writer, a singer, and a musician from Dublin. Her stories have been published in the Owen Stone 2020 and 3 editions of Visual Verse, an anthology of art and words. So in terms of music then, Emma performed live in a number of Dublin venues throughout 2019 and up to January 2020. She has spent the last year playing from home and writing new songs for future recording. So Emma, think it all stopped for you then after?
Pretty much. Yeah.
Terrible, terrible. Sorry about that.
Oh,
okay.
It's great to write short stories as well, I guess, because you can keep doing that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Bernie. So what I thought I'd read this evening is a lockdown project that I undertook in the 6-week lockdown from October to November last year. And it lasted 40 days. And I set myself the challenge of taking a photograph every day of those 40 days within my 5 kilometers, and then writing a piece inspired by whatever image I took. So it was a way, I suppose, of capturing spontaneity where there was none, and, you know, feeling that there was kind of a bit of movement and a bit of momentum in a time when it was so restricted. And I called the project There Are No Fixed Stars, because I was actually researching for a story at the time, and I was researching around kind of astronomy and the planets and all that kind of thing. And I became fascinated by this idea that astronomers and philosophers used to believe that the stars were fixed. But, you know, as time moved on, that turned out not to be the case. And I liked that idea because I was trying to find a way of moving at a time when I felt that I could be perceived as static. So here are 3 very short pieces from that. And the first one is Day 7, The Lighthouse. There is a quiet dignity about the lighthouse at dawn. Nothing of its patient humility in this time speaks of sea darkness endured, of its incessant vigilance throughout the night, of what that could do to its light. I've stood beneath it in the dark, watched reflected water apparitions make waves of its walls from the harbour, its softly pulsing beacon gentle in the dome. I don't have to sail to feel safe by it, to feel saved by it. To stand on dry land is enough. Even at dawn, when its own light rests and its reward awaits, I can feel its protection in the way it greets the day. The second one is from day 26 of the 40, and it's called Intertidal. And this was a photograph of a rock pool at a nearby beach, inspired this piece. In the intertidal space, nothing is as sure as change, nothing as certain as tumult. Yet there are those who reside there, in pools left behind by the tide, or in the depths when it's at its highest. I wonder if the sea anemone recoils at the oncoming, if the limpet and mussel flinch at the onslaught, if they feel the weight, the relief when the flood recedes. No, for they have found ways of holding on and of holding fast within. And this is the final one from day 24, and it's called The Oblivious Bird. And it was a photograph that I took of a bird in a tree near me. The small bird knows not what the sight of it in flight can do for those who cannot leave the ground. It is not cognizant of the capacity of its own song to bring music in the moment. It is unaware of the awe invoked by its pattern and colour. It cannot conceive of its lightness as inspiration to those wishing to shed. It is unconscious of a fragility so unfathomable to those who equate size with strength and the capacity to endure. Yet endure it does, and delight it does, and live it does, perhaps all the more for not knowing. And that's
Thanks
it.
very much, Emma. Thank you. A great idea. Good to know that the stars aren't fixed, because that adds a bit of uncertainty to life. That's no harm. But you know, your beautiful language opens up to us the importance of the natural world and the importance of taking time out to do some really close observation as well, you know. So thanks very much for sharing.
Thank you.
Thank you. Calmed us all down a bit. Okay. Oh, next up is moi. Okay. So I have 2 poems that I will read within 5 minutes. So the first poem is called Wedded Bliss, and this is about a nun from a semi-contemplative order that I met some years ago. Wedded Bliss. Wedded to the Son of your Father God, who made your world, hurled the elements in perfect order over 6 days in ways no scientists can fathom, and rested on the 7th to give you a blessed day. And your heaven assuredly awaits you, baits you with the prize for all right-thinking brides of paradise. You confide in me a tale of seeking safety behind tall gate, high wall, lured by the call of benediction chimes and holy rhymes, bells, books, candles, handles of religious reliquary. Your covenant with convent brought you pure celestial joy, boundless bridal nights and dawns. Angelically coy, you carry your groom to the tabernacle room as the sun rises in the east, your immaculate soul hungry for the morning feast of transubstantiated bread, the sacramental appetizer that starts your every day. Each night, you take him home across the failing light and dusky air down highly polished wooden floors. You revel in this blissful task. The din of outside traffic drowned by your seraphic beat of heart. Your clasped hands whiten and your child's eyes brighten as you regale me with the rolling late and early shifts, the daily grind for which you signed. I envy your certitude, your unconditional love. One day, he will keep your soul on heap on you the everlasting blessings you deserve. Your veiled, unworldly beauty longs for that. Next one speaks for itself. It's called Killaloo Moo Cow. Ebony shiny, you angle towards me, head aslant, eyes sober sad. The closer you get, the faster you run, your rear end swaying like a punch bag. And now your pleading expression comes into focus. You stop expectantly at the electric wire. I watch from the gate, enthralled by the rurality of it all. My pockets are empty. I have nothing to offer but my idle curiosity. Your troops follow your command of the charge of the bovine brigade. You halt and they hold back, awkwardly hoofing the earth, futilely queuing for a boarding pass to freely roam the hills in sight. You look longingly across the gap between wire and gate. A frisson of hopeless hope ripples through the sleek assemblage. Portentous ear tags betray your one-way tickets to butcher shops where you will hang like installation art and be critically acclaimed by gourmands and coveted by carnivores. It dawns on me the tragic truth of livestock, the hulking great beauty and necessity of it. Yet again, you act as plenipotentiary, negotiating possible escape from farm gate to dinner plate with a casual passerby. I walk away consumed with guilt, wilt under the inescapable truth of you never escaping the food chain, the steak knife cattle prod. And yes, I will consume your cousin this evening, cooked to perfection and seasoned with crocodile tears, exotic fungi, and a full-blooded red to drown my insincerity. Okay, now, next up, oh gosh, yeah, Anne. Next up, we have Anne McDonald. Hi, Anne. Now, Anne is a spoken word poet, dramatist, and creative writing teacher. Her writing has been published in Women's News, Hot Press, cool, Electric Acorn, Women's Work, Anthologies 1 and 2, The Blue Nib, The Strokes Down Anthology 4, Live Encounters, 192 magazine, and Cronin. Your work then has also been broadcast on RTE Radio and KLC or 96 FM. Is that in Kildare?
I think so, yeah.
Yep.
I think so, Bernie, yeah.
Yep, good. And you're on podcasts, Marine Times and Lifting the Sink. Anne holds the MPhil in creative writing from TCD, and her debut collection of poetry, Prose Books, is now out, and it includes the award-winning poem, Whose Coat? Great poem. I heard it at your launch. Yep. Off you go.
Thanks a million, Bernie, and thanks for that very grandiose introduction. Just before I do read my poem, I just want to say a huge thank you. This has been one of the most relaxed but brilliant readings that I've attended, and been delighted to be able to read that. So without further ado, I am going to read one from Prose Books, and it's I like to write about things that happen to me just as they happen. And this one, it will, I suppose some of the ladies in the audience will probably understand it better than the gentlemen, but I hope that it might give you an insight into some of the things those ladies have to deal with. And it is unfortunately a true story, and it's called Spatchcock Chicken. 8 years after my second child, in a hot flush or after a flash decision, I decided to have the coil removed, having been assured by the newly qualified balding gynecologist who inserted it in the first place that it would be a simple procedure when the time came that it was no longer needed. So I booked an appointment with my female doctor and asked her to retrieve it. Unconcerned that in the intervening years, bush went out of fashion, it never entered my head to have the hairs on my lady garden ripped off with hot wax to maximize my sex appeal. She smiled behind the mask when I revealed my natural state, and she said of late, full bushes were rare. but my crutches were for my assumed position, soles together, spatchcock chicken. She found it hard to keep a steady hand, and I knew if I didn't have my tonsils out when I was 22, I would have thought she was going to remove them there and then by the wrong avenue. I knew that she was struggling, and I was juggling with the wisdom of the idea of a new baby and an 8-year-old. And my blood ran cold when her head appeared above the hedgerow with a look of worry. "I'm sorry, Anne," she said as she held aloft a piece of blue nylon thread. "This just came off. You'll have to go to A&E." "Are you fucking kidding me?" I know was not language I should probably use to a qualified physician, but I'd been over 40 minutes by then in the spatchcock position. And I decided I would not be defeated and was definitely not going to be cheated out of my ability to conceive. And I knew the very person who might retrieve the coil without a fuss, the original balding gynecologist. So I raced to a surgery in Santry, and as I entered, I saw a sign that read driving test centre. So I Googled him and with a bit of digging, traced his premises to a clinic over a chemist shop in Balbriggan. "You might not remember me," I said to his now perfectly smooth, completely bald head. "You put a coil in 8 years ago, and I was hoping you could take it out." If he recognised me from where he was standing, I couldn't say, but I so badly wanted to have the thing removed that I assumed the position, Spatchcock Chicken, and he proceeded to try to locate the device. After 30 minutes, and on his advice, I tried to think of something happy, so I looked out the window of his upstairs clinic at the sky, straight into the faces of the passengers on the top deck of the 191 Dublin to Balbriggan bus, which was passing by slowly before stopping for a red light. "There should be a piece of blue nylon string," he said, and by now his head was glowing. "I know the other doctor took it," I replied, trying not to make eye contact with the passengers inside the bus. He dug a bit deeper, and if I wasn't already lying down, I would have fainted from sheer mortification. Suddenly, he held up his tongs and shouted, "Here it is." He was all biz, like he found his true vocation. And I tried to be happy on the way home, sitting with some difficulty on a ring of foam and giant nighttime things with wings in my mix. Just for kicks, I asked the hubby if he still really wanted another baby. His face had that panic-stricken look that knows the wrong answer could be fatal. So he said, "Maybe." He looked a bit stricken, so I made the decision. Our lot is our lot. "Well, we're not," I announced. "And another new rule is no matter how tender the barbecue or finger fucking licking, we will never again in this house eat a spatchcock chicken." Thank you.
I will never eat a spatchcock chicken ever again. Head appeared above the hedgerow.
True story. What can I tell you?
My legs are crossed listening to that. That was just, look, that was genius comedy, right? With great internal rhyming. I mean, there's so many lines there. I can't write quick enough. They're brilliant, brilliant. So yeah, I guess half the population anyway could relate to that. Yep.
There you go.
Thanks very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Tim or Timothy Dwyer.
Tim.
Tim. Hiya, Tim. Yeah. So Tim's poetry chapbook is called Smithy of Our Longings. That's a great name. His poetry appears regularly in Irish and UK journals, including recently or forthcoming in Crannog, Ciphers, and The High Window. He moved recently from the US and now lives in Bangor, County Down. Take it away.
All right, Bernie, thank you very much. And thank you to the IWC and Alan, thank you so much for reading from both of your great novels. The first poem I'm going to read will be in the summer issue of The High Window. We've had a number of music poems tonight, and this is also a music poem. And I picked it too because of the coming of age theme. Hickory Wind is the name of the poem. It was a song written by a singer-songwriter called Graham Parsons, late 60s. He was with the Byrds when he sang this song. He collaborated with Amy Lou Harris, and he's one of the age of 27, 27 years old, and his life ended way back in 1973. And Hickory Wind. When first I heard it a wintry Sunday morning, after the first late night of my young life, then as now, a lullaby soothing me awake. It makes me feel better each time you begin calling me home, Hickory Wind. My tinny transistor radio, my narrow room above the subway line, the ledge I sat on in the middle of the night. Graham's voice was a tether that held me for another day. This next poem is a very new poem, and usually at a reading, I wouldn't read something so new, but I picked it tonight because hearing Alan's great novels, there's an image in it that that Ms. Cassidy would maybe appreciate. The name of the poem is Jenny. It's to Mary Jane Nyland, born in Gort in Galway in 1919, died in Brooklyn in 2001. Jenny. On a bench in Donaghadee, I watch Belfast Lough slip into the Irish Sea, and there is no surprise or disbelief when I see you, Mom, sitting beside me for once, relaxing with the salty breeze, the chattering gulls, the rolling waves, and our conversation is easy. You tap my arm, whisper, Jesus, Mary and Joseph, tip your head toward a woman old as you, dressed like a glamorous, fading movie star. We can't stop laughing, and people at the next bench start laughing too. Then you light up one of your trusty Marlboros, and I marvel, same as when I was a boy, at your long, vaporous exhales that rise above us. And for once, I bum a cigarette from you, and together we talk and laugh and smoke the whole afternoon away. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Another brave singer, fair play to you. I think we all of a certain age remember the tinny transistor radios. Your second poem, Jenny, is that your mom, is it?
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, so you really bring her back to life and you capture her in a lovely snapshot memory. She sounds like a great character. That was lovely. I really enjoyed that. Thank you very much, Tim.
Well, thank you, Bernie.
Thank you. And the last one on the list, Ruth Ennis. Is Ruth there? Hi, Ruth. Hi. Now, Ruth Ennis is an Irish aspiring children's writer based in Kildare. She has a BA in English with Drama from UCD and an MPhil in Children's Literature from TCD. Cool. She has written poetry, short stories and essays for many publications, including Paper Lanterns, Sonder, Silver Apples, The Mouldy Bike, The Blue Nib, Strange Times, and Tiernan Oak. She was a young writer delegate with the Irish Writers' Centre for the International Literature Festival, Dublin, and was selected for the Words Ireland Mentorship Programme. Ruth was recently awarded funding from the Arts Council Literature Bursary. Busy girl, Ruth.
Little bit. Thank you. I am going to read 2 short poems and a flash fiction piece too, if that's all right. The first poem is called 3, and it's about my 3-year-old niece. Birthdays are always a big deal in our house. You are the oldest of the young, my first niece, my last claim to the title, the baby of the family. Chatters and clashers inside, and we slip out to your swing set. We chat, you ask, I push back and forth, higher, 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 until you reach the clouds. I call you to come back, and when you are ready, you do. We are okay with the quiet. I ask if you want to go back to your party. You tell me not yet, so we wait until you are ready. And this next one is a flash fiction piece that was published in Tiernan Oak. It's called New Job. Listen, I'm sure you're wondering, Emma, what exactly are you doing living on a literal cloud? I get it, it's certainly unusual, but it's not too bad, you know? Yeah, it's small, about the size of 2 king-size beds, wouldn't you say? And okay, it's a bit damp. Honestly, though, it's not that different from a studio in town, am I right? No? Long story short, I messed up. Lesson learned, don't piss off your local magic doesn't exist, I'm totally not a witch, because if you do stand her up one too many times, she will condemn you to 30 years of living on a cloud. A year for every minute you were late to the date. Say what you want about witches, they're consistent with their cruel and unusual punishment. I have to stay up here and do her bidding or face the consequence of another 10 years being added to my sentence. And I'm kind of okay with it. I mean, I didn't have any plans for after college, so this seems as good a plan as any. She crafted this cloud. It was very cool, ancient languages, bright colors, controlling the elements, the whole shebang. I highly recommend you go watch a curse being laid upon someone if you ever get the chance. Anyway, she says that the ground below this cloud was a site of great injustice. Maybe she got stood up here once before. That'd explain her reaction, wouldn't it? So, I'm here to reap chaos upon anyone who steps under this damned earth. Basically, I'm just here to mess with people. When they walk under the cloud, I'm supposed to use this bookish and sprinkler here to inflict mild inconvenience of light rain onto those who tread on this cursed ground. It's like when you're walking along the street, minding your own business, on what seems to be a nice dry day, but then suddenly there's that one spot of cloud that you just happen to walk under, and the second it starts to rain, while everyone else seems miraculously dry. That's me, I do that. There's an art to it, you know? Not enough rain and folks on the ground don't notice. Then I get called up and threatened with extra time, and it's just a bit of a heartache to listen to. Too much rain and you run the risk of somebody noticing that something weird is afoot. You know me, I'm clumsy. I was shuffling around on the cloud, getting ready for the day ahead. I knocked over the bucket and the water was dumped onto the ground. Any given day, this is less than ideal, but it was a bit of a disaster when the bucket went with it. That's when you looked up. Thank you. My last poem is the opening extract of the verse novel that I am working on. It's for a teen and YA audience, and it's called Waving. I am 4 years old, my brother half my age, and parents joined as one. At the beach, millions of grains of sand meet the sea. My brother gathers thousands of grains, my father collects them into one sandcastle. My mother holds my hand, and I stand at the edge, unafraid of the thing that nibbles at my feet that could swallow me whole. I say, look at the waves, going up and down, and up and down, and she laughs, softly. Poor among millions, we are whole. Thank you.
Wow. Now, that's the opener of your novel, yeah?
Yeah, that's it's a verse novel.
It's a great opener, and you already feel yourself drawn in listening to that. You know, I wanted to hear more. That was great.
Thank you.
Your flash fiction is just so fast and so well performed, and your pace just makes me feel old. Clever. Your first piece then the defining moment of someone as young as you becoming an aunt, and then you start feeling a little bit old, having to deal with a 3-year-old. It's kind of weird, isn't it?
Yeah. A little bit.
Thanks very much.
Thank you
very much, Ruth.
Bernie, I'm going to cut in here for a minute. Can everyone hear me? Yeah.
Yep.
I just want to thank you so very much. This was an amazing evening with a journey through, well, all sorts of subjects, and you described them to us very well as well when people had done their reading. So thank you so much. And I should have said at the beginning, Bernie has just finished an online spoken word course called Inspiring Memoir via Coming of Age Literature for the Irish Writers Centre. And the first 5 readers are people who took part in that course. And I really sincerely hope that we can put this course on again because it seems to have been a wonderful success. So anyone out there who's interested in working with Bernie on their performance and presentation, not that anyone needs it, I hasten to add, we'll let you know via our newsletter when this is on again. I really, really enjoyed every single one of the readings. It was fantastic, you know, just to be able to share those 2 hours with everyone. And yeah, when we all learned some very interesting things about referendums, the Beatles, childhood memories, and Spatchcock Chicken.
Oh,
so we're going to try and let everybody, you can unmute your microphones if you want to say anything before we go. Yeah? And then, Shauna, were you going to see if we could get everybody in for a picture? Might take a screenshot of everybody to put on social media, if that's okay.
I sneakily already have, but if anyone would like to pose this time, go right ahead.
Are you taking photographs, Shauna?
I did, yes.
Okay, then. So finally, thanks to Alan.
Great to see you, Alan.
As always, a wonderful reader, and could listen to him all day. And thanks to everyone who read, and hopefully we'll do it again soon. That's it, I think. Good luck to everybody from the Irish Writers Centre.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Betty.
Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, Betty.
Thanks,
and
Bernie,
everyone.
so much.
Cheers.
You're welcome.